What is something that old people love that you don't understand? I'm a window cleaner and have a lot of elderly customers. Over the years, I've found they love to be the first one to tell me one of the neighbors has died. To the point where, if I say, "Yay, Thelma already let me know," they look genuinely disappointed and annoyed that they weren't the one to break the news to me. They just seem to like gossip in general. Death will certainly qualify. My dad is a baby boomer, and he literally walks around the neighborhood daily to find out new information from the neighbors so he can come tell my mom he's so proud that he knows new info he can share. Community watch. My dad loves being the neighborhood guy. He has an egg guy, a farmer who sells him his irregular-sized eggs for something ridiculous, like $1 for 4 dozen, and he distributes them to the neighborhood. My parents have a really nice pool he encourages his neighbors to come over to use anytime. He has a generator and storage freezers, and when storms hit, he offers to store frozen groceries and charge cell phones. He does free carpentry work. He makes booze out of fermented berries that he fuses with vodka and passes round. For a while he grew weed even though he has never smoked marijuana in his entire life, solely because he correctly assumed some of the neighbors would like it. He leverages all of his neighborhood power for gossip. That's it. He gives them pot and eggs, they spill the tea. He goes around the neighborhood dispensing gifts and favors like some mafia don, and in return he gets to be the single most well-informed central gossip depository on his block. He is so proud to be able to tell me the marital problems of people I have never met and care nothing about. Be careful he doesn't turn into the information broker. Soon he'll be selling secrets left and right, getting wealth and power. Surpass all the gifts and favors he invested. Wanna know if the neighbor's kid is actually yours, not your neighbor. Info, Daddy has a deal. Need to know who in the neighborhood is loaning the bush trimmer? Broker, Daddy knows who has it and who it is going to be loaning it next. Need dirt for blackmail against someone? Daddy knows it all. Everyone needs a hobby. Your dad managed to turn one hobby into several. That's pretty impressive. Without using this knowledge power for evil too. This sounds like my mother-in-law, except she doesn't give back. There's no eggs or pot anywhere to be found. I mean, if we aren't gossiping while eating a cannabis oil-infused omelette, what are we even doing here? What are we working towards? My take on it, I'm not old enough. Is that what old people value? Most of them. Is no longer money or adventure. They love comfort and people. Like it's their last chance to connect, to interact, to feel. Money and anything else stays here, but perhaps memories and feelings not. Edit. Oh wow, much obliged by the award. Maybe they like talking shit like the rest of us. Thelma already posted this. Telling you who died recently, famous or not famous. My mom would ask, "Do you remember Mary Bly?" I'd reply, "No," so she would add, "She was our neighbor on High Street. She had those 2 boys who were 7 years older than you." But bottom line was always, well, she's dead now. I've reached the tipping point. I love my hedge and some drunk kid fell in it. Big hole. Will take 4 years to grow back. This get off my lawn moment awakened the old in me. Please just put a big round door there and live as a hobbit. In my country, Brazil, old people sit in front of their houses and do absolutely nothing for hours, just watching people and cars go by. This is more common for lower social class. For instance, my grandma and her friends gather every day at someone's door and just sit there until the night comes. They are retired. I live in a very rural part of America, and old people do the same thing here. Old men will sit in front of their houses, drinking beer and waving at cars that go by. It seems really nice, actually. Guess there comes a point where you're content to just sit back and let the world come to you. My friend group sits on the sidewalk outside our apartment building. Mostly we wave at passing cars and talk to anyone who walks by. We also drink coffee and tell dirty jokes. We're old and retired, there's nothing on TV. If I sit in the apartment too long, the walls feel like they're closing in. The funny thing is my grandparents did the same thing. Isn't this a gag in King of the Hill? All the men drinking beer and not saying anything but a random yoop here and there. It's not just a gag, it was inspired by a real thing that happened when Mike Judge moved to Texas. He didn't really see his neighbors until he worked on his lawn fence, after which they appeared to hang out and talk exactly like they do in the alley on the show. I grew up in Garland, Tex. Can confirm King of the Hill is an accurate portrayal of suburban Texas. Yep, I tell you what manadaden, Golleberg de crazy mate. You're right, Boomhauer. we do need to get some chairs. It's a shared experience in Texas to grow up watching King of the Hill and never know until someone else tells you that the joke with Boomhauer is that he's supposed to be unintelligible. He just comes off to us as a laid-back guy. One of my favorite jokes of that show is in the episode where they are volunteer firefighters and the station burns down. Everyone gives their account of what happens. And when we see the event from Boomhauer's perspective, all the guys speak like him, and he speaks eloquently. I kinda imagine that's what you're talking about. I'm only 40 and live in a very urban area and do this from my third-floor balcony. I don't necessarily wave, but I'll watch the traffic on the corner, people using the bike share station below, people walking dogs, etc. Older people do this in India too. At least I see it a lot in southern rural India. Locals told me it's to let fresh air in the house that they leave the door open and that it's nice to hang out with neighbors. As people drove by their friend and family's houses, they'd sometimes stop by if there were people sitting on the porch with the door opens. Basically, a way of saying, I'm home and open for social interaction, come say hi. Also, I think the older people get the less they go out, which can get pretty boring, so I understand that people watching can become a popular hobby lull. This actually sounds kinda peaceful though. Old people gossiping for hours while watching people passing by, feeding the odd cat or dog, chilling. Sounds like a good time. I can't speak for Op in general cause Brazil is different, but when I've seen this in Hispanic communities, here in Texas, they aren't even talking, like literally doing nothing. I honestly get it sometimes. I'm not even old and I'm almost to that point where I could just disassociate on the porch bucket. I'm an unemployed, chronically sick man in his late 20s. I absolutely just sit on my porch with soft music playing and just watch people, dogs and birds, pass me by. If I sit still long enough, the birds will start ignoring me and start perching within feet of me. I swear I'm like an 80-year-old trapped in a young but sick man. My sister became quadriplegic due to Mrs. She used to get high and recline in her power chair out in the backyard under a tree. She loved it when birds would land on her. Do they talk to each other or just sit like Hector Salamanca? Imagining 6 Brazilian grannies binging their bells at passers-by. I'm 15, but to be honest, sitting around with a group of friends talking isn't so bad. When I was your age, I used to sit on a large ramp inside my school for hours, just talking to my friends. Some of us would read, some would play video games, some would do homework, but for the most part we were just hanging around and chatting. It was my favorite part of the day. I would never go back to being a teenager again, but I do miss the simplicity of that sort of friendship. There is this weird type of traditional Vietnamese music my parents said that only old people like, and they could not stand it either. A decade later, and apparently they enjoy it. I await my turn in fear. Edit. For those asking, it is Kai Luong. This is going to draw some hate, but once I reached my 50s, Bruce Springsteen's library suddenly became enjoyable. I'd always liked bits of his work here and there, but once I got old enough, bum, I get it. My girlfriend always says Steely Dan is old man music, but I've liked them since my early 20s. You mind sharing the name style? I searched old Vietnamese songs and found this. I'm not Vietnamese, so the effect is lost on me, but still curious. It's called Kai Luong. Googled it to hear it. Here's the link for anyone interested. It sounds like Vietnamese country music to me. I'm 73. Yes, I know what Reddit is. I love retirement, playing tennis with friends, then complaining about shit over coffee and a donut, tinkering with stuff until I break it, then calling a qualified technician. Gives my wife something to bitch about, playing WoW when you snot-nosed kids are in school, so I don't get killed trying to complete the quest. Skiing midweek at senior rates when the slopes are empty. That's just for starters. Oldie here. I worked for a Canadian clothing store called Marks. I used to point our new arrivals to my daughter to see if she liked them, and she would say, ew, those are old people clothes. One day she came in, looked around and said, you guys are starting to get some pretty good stuff. I laughed because nothing had really changed, and watched the expression on her face change as it slowly dawned on her. This reminds me of something a friend did several years ago. We went to the local courthouse to visit a friend of mine, and as we were leaving, my friend peeked into the courtroom window to see if there was anyone in there that she knew. There was a guy who went to school with us who was just a year older in there. My friend said, holy crap, so-and-so is in there. Have you seen him lately? My God, he looks about 50 years old. We were 45 at the time. I just waited and said nothing. And about a minute later, we stepped into the elevator and she said, "Well, oh no, oh God, oh no, oh God." I laughed until I cried. I do this to myself all the time. I Google old band sectors I used to be into, and their pictures pop up on Google, and I'll say, "Oh God, they look so old. What happened?" And my husband goes, "Well, you're old too, you know." Thanks, babe. Looking at the women's section on their website right now, and it just looks like regular plain clothing. I'm 37 beat this. I recently ordered some tops and put one of them on yesterday and realized it was the perfect practical old lady top. But it's comfortable and doesn't wrinkle. So I'm a practical old lady. Watching the news constantly. My wife's grandmother was in long-term memory care for several years before her death. Towards the end, she didn't know what day it was, or if it was morning or evening, but she watched Khan 24 hours a day and would lose her shit if somebody changed the channel because she wanted to know what was going on. Same with my grandmother and local news. If someone changes the channel, "Hey, I'm watching that." Even if she's busy scrolling through her phone or reading the paper, she says it's because she doesn't want to miss if something happens. My dad watches the news all the time, and I can't stand it because all it does is make him mad. I wouldn't call my dad old just yet. He's still in his 50s, but this is definitely him. He watches it and listens to it if he's driving. Then he wants to talk about it all the time. It almost makes me want to avoid him. He gets all fired up and starts yelling about how wrong I am. My mum often frets about his blood pressure, but he won't stop. Do we all have the same dad? Sitting hours behind those slot machines. All the casino ads make it look like you'll be gambling in Monaco with a bouncy, joyful group of young people. Then you go in and it's endless rows of blank-faced olds jamming on those buttons. Having to remove your oxygen mask to puff on your second pack of smokes of the day. Seeing that when I went to the casino for the first time as a young adult really turned me off of the whole gambling thing. Telling anyone who will listen about their various ailments. Look, I'm 57, so I'm ancient by Reddit standards. But I vowed early on that I will not become one of these oversharing old people. My Miles suffers from a paper-thin vagina. The rest of us suffer from hearing about it. Oh shit, she needs some Vagifem Low. That internal cream will fluff out those walls in no time. This is the beauty of Reddit. If mom needs an actual solution, bam, she's got one. If she's just complaining, people can tell her to stop oversharing if she's not interested in the solution. Need to fluff up your vaginal walls? Use Vagifem and spread your wings, you beautiful butterfly. Haha! The cream made my labia grow back too, no joke. Everything shriveled up, and I had like no labia minora visible anymore, just flat, and my vagina was just raw and irritable all the time. So after about a month on the cream, I checked with a mirror, and I was like, "Ong, I have labia minora again." It made it like Threx bigger, and my clit got bigger. I've learned more about vaginal atrophy from your comment than I did from medical school. Thank you, and please continue to share your experiences with other women. I've learned about vaginal atrophy just now from this comment, and wow. But seriously, how are your knees doing? A friend of mine calls it the organ recital, and dear God, we are starting to do this at dinner parties. Plus side is we're still having dinner parties, so there's that. I'm in my 70s. When new aches or pains pop up every month or two, you're not going to immediately run to a doctor every single time. So you'll want to share this information to gauge out how serious it is, find out how other people have dealt with that ache or pain, and share your own discoveries with others. Seriously, check back with me in 30 years and let me know if you've actually avoided doing it. Watching the news obsessively. My dad has crossed over into this territory. Dude, I feel like I'm the parent now. I go to my parents' house, and I'm like, okay, 1 hour of news only. Then turn the TV off and go do something outside. Walk the dog, ride your bike, go make out with someone in the backseat of your car. I don't give a shit, just go outside. Bitching about everything on the Nextdoor app. That, and what are those loud explosions? Well, Barbara, it's the 4th of July. Also, why was the ambulance at the convenience store? They were probably tending to something that isn't any of your business, Frederick. I love Nextdoor, lol. So our town, less than 3,000 people, has a Facebook page where everyone is supposed to ask for assistance or find out when the next big trash day is. Instead, 90% of it is old people and Karens and Kens bitching about kids roaming the streets and the current political climate. Like, half the people in town are banned, which I find hilarious. Ate it. I think it is hilarious that this is my most upvoted comment ever, and it's just me shit-talking my small town that I actually love very much. My town, about 25,000, has about 8 such groups, and easily 10 selling pages. Each group, created once the power-drunk moderators of its predecessor, have banned the critical mass residents, who then start the next group. The names are progressively petty, things like Sumtown Residents Page, New Sumtown Page, Sumtown Group for Local People Only, Sumtown Page without Nazi mods, Sumtown Page with no rules, Anything Goes, has a growing list of numerous rules, Sumtown Page for Real Talk, No Gossiping, Sumtown Page for All Talk, including Gossip, No Power, Crazed Mods, Locals Only. The fatal flaw of all of these groups is that they are exclusively moderated by people who took their ball and left the other groups because they're incapable of playing nicely with others. Each is, without exception, a shit show. My town has like 4 Facebook groups for the same goddamn small town because people keep getting banned, so they need to find another place to complain. I'm a member of all of them for shits and giggles, and they get progressively more toxic and insane with each one. Great fun to scroll through every now and then. Facebook, adding your own name to a comment like great photos, love Mom and John. I fucking know it's you, Maureen, it shows me your when you comment. Soap operas. I get bored after 30 minds. How does someone watch 500 episodes? Fine china and silverware. It's pretty in the way anything made in bulk can be. It's expensive, has very little resale value, fragile as fuck, and virtually useless, unless you're trying to impress another old person. Personal opinion, no hate. I use my grandmother's fine china as everyday plates. Even put them in the dishwasher. Freaks my mother out here. But they are plates. They are serving their purpose in life. Why would I have extra plates I don't use except for holidays? I feel like it probably is a sentiment carried over from when fancy things were very expensive, so people took good care of them. For example, my grandparents were poor and lived in a rural village, and they would rent plates for holidays because they had none, so I sorta get it. But I also get your stance too. My wife's mother had dinner parties and broke out the fine china several times a year. It was a big deal in their house. So when we got married, we just had to pick out a china pattern and stemware. 15 years later, after collecting 8 full place settings, we have never used any of it. I don't see the point, but it's important to her, so I let her do her thing. The amount of people who asked me if I was going to register for fine china for my wedding last year was ridiculous. Why would I want plates I'll never use? Oh my God, just sitting down in my recliner is glorious. Younger people may think I'm nuts, but I have so much stuff going on, it's nice to just sit down and relax. I inherited my great-grandma's old lazy-boy recliner, and it's my favorite spot in the house. I love chilling in my old lady chair. The amount of people who asked me if I was going to register for fine china for my wedding last year was ridiculous. Why would I want plates I'll never use? Obsessed with the weather. My partner's grandmother house sat while we were away for a trip and made sure to record the weather details for us of every day we were gone. In all fairness, I've lived most of my life in Oklahoma. Weather has always been a concern. Every Oklahoman is an amateur meteorologist. Oh yeah, I see the hook echo right there. Let's get in the stairs closet. Walking around naked in the gym locker room. Now that I'm old, I just like to travel to places to look at the scenery. 20-year-old me would not understand the point of that at all. Everyone who learned to drive before GPs still love having in-depth conversations about alternative routes, even if they now use their phone's maps and can see all the different options and about how long each would take. They'll give you landmarks that haven't been there in 20 years. Turn left at the building that the Khan Wright used to be at then. Turn right where the old Roy Rogers restaurant used to be. Both those places closed when I was very young. Ick where the fuck they were. I just let them go on about it, then use jeeps if I need to. They love to refuse to learn new things, insisting that they just can't. My mom still can't use a smartphone or a computer and keeps getting scammed. She says it's cause she isn't a nerd and didn't grow up with them. I told her the personal computer has now been around for about 40 years. Doesn't matter. It's my kryptonite. I'm in my mid-40s and I just can't deal with my mom's fear of everything, including using technology because she might click on the wrong thing. I've asked her what the worst-case scenario is. Maybe she gets billed for something or sent something unexpected, and reminded her I'm there to help make things right. I've also reminded her that she's spent so long resisting this stuff that it gets harder to learn each day. It just doesn't settle with her. My mile is like this. She stopped working in the late 80s and has basically frozen herself there, save for at least using a cell phone. Of course, she refuses to use a smartphone. She is an otherwise intelligent person, but she also says things like she's afraid she's going to click the wrong thing, so her solution is to just refuse to use a computer entirely. I loved my grandpa for that. Man never backed down. He dropped out of high school in the 1940s, and that was the extent of his education. But God damn it, when email became popular, his retired ass bought a computer and taught himself how to do it. He would browse the internet news, as he called it. He stayed up as best he could with emerging tech. He even had a smartphone, the only person in his retirement community to have one. China, the plates and stuff. I don't get what the appeal is to have something you hardly use, that takes up a bunch of space, and yet functions literally the same as any other ordinary dish. My grandfather knows more about computers than his son does. Touching strangers' babies. Why is that? My husband's grandma will lunge towards a baby like a hyena, try a G just to steal from a lion. She then starts getting in the baby's face while dancing like an idiot and trying to smooch their puffy baby cheeks. She doesn't care what the parents' guardians say either, and will respond with, "It's okay, they're laughing." She weirds me out as an adult cause she has no view of personal space. I feel bad for those parents. Asking people when they're getting married and having kids. I'm 27 and it's incessant from my grandparents and mother. Go you, when are you going to settle down? It doesn't stop either. When are you going to have kids? Has a kid? Are you going to stop at one? Stop thinking about my dick, auntie. Old lady perms, those types are about to die out, but I still see little blue-haired ladies out and about. I don't get it. They only wash their hair once a week and it just doesn't look good. A truly fascinating thing I recently learned. A blue or purple rinse is something you can do if blonde hair is brassy or yellowish. Anyone who bleaches their hair has probably used a purple shampoo once or twice to cancel out the yellow. Here's the tricky bit though. As we age, our color perception changes, and many older people develop a yellowish tint to their vision. And some people speculate that this means they always see their hair as brass yellow, and therefore go much harder with the toners, see the blue tones as closer to white. Another reason, as your hair thins and thins, your pink scalp shows through. The blue is to counteract the pink and give you the illusion of a fuller head of hair. Beyond rude, totally insensitive to what a person might be going through, this one is the worst of all, no question. They love asking me what I'm doing with my life. Goofy. Working way over your scheduled hours for no pay, to show that you are a good, hard-working person. I always think of the person who said 20 years later, the only people who will remember you working all those extra hours are your children. This is 100% true. My mom did this at a minimum wage job the entire time I was growing up. She would go in at least an hour early, if not more, not clock in and just start working because she was asked to. Then she would clock out and work afterwards. She would be gone before I got up for school and not be home until after 5. She did it every day and then would constantly complain about it, how it wasn't fair, etc. She retired from working that job after something like 25 years, still barely making above minimum wage. I told her to quit and go someplace else. I told her to talk to an attorney or the labor board about wage things. She didn't care to do anything but complain my entire childhood through my adulthood. She's been retired for about 3 years now, and anytime I see her, she finds a way to bring up her old shitty job. Yes, it's the truth. We overwork thinking it's a good thing. I did for 20 and didn't change anything. I am glad the new generation is changing that. I was wondering why so many of the older workers at my office all do this after talking with them for a while, though the real reason seems to be that they hate being around their families. Televangelists. I'm 60 and my brother just told me I'm too nostalgic and need to quit complaining about the cost of things and glorifying the old days. He is absolutely right. He is absolutely right. Waking up early. Grandma, you are retired. Why would you not sleep in every day? They lose the ability to do so. Something about hormones, if I recall it correctly. I'm not even 40 and I can't sleep past 8. Going 35 miles on the highway. Just stay off the damn highway, Margaret. You're actually making everything worse for everyone, and clearly you're in no rush. Andre Ria. Being assisted by young children means the world to them for some reason. This one is easy to explain, I think. When you have kids, you fall helplessly in love with them, of course. The golden years of childhood, maybe 5, 11, fly by for parents very, very quickly. Then suddenly your beautiful kid who you were so close to becomes a surly, distant teen, sob, and would rather not hang out with you. This is good, of course. They need to do their own thing. And it's all over. Later in life, you remember your kid's childhood as a period of great personal happiness. At age 70, interacting with a 5, 11-year-old again brings back so many memories and an almost overwhelming surge of love. This got me teary-eyed because my daughter is 4 and she's heading into those golden years, and lately I've been tripping balls by the fact she's already 4. I'm gonna be one of those old people.